Hey, greetings and welcome. I'm Deborah.
Hello, everyone. This is Bakitko.
So we have a loaded series of topics to discuss today. So I'm just going to dive right in. We're talking about an exhausting enterprise. We're using the word enterprise very intentionally. We'll come to that a little bit later. But often when we're finding that a lot of founders at some point in time, no matter how successful you are, no matter how much you achieve, you get to a point where you just get tired of your business. Either you're physically tired of doing going through your routine, or you're just not juiced and inspired by your business anymore. And it can be very frustrating. And this is why a lot of owners start looking for ways to prepare themselves for exit. Some owners even start businesses with the idea of exiting it at some point. But as we have already discussed in an earlier live stream, that's not necessarily the way of this kind of disruptive enterprise. So what do we do if we don't really want to exit, but we've lost our juice and our inspiration in the business and we're tired? What do we do? We're going to talk a little bit about this today. I'm leaving a gap for you to say something if you want to.
No, I think you depicted very well the picture of, actual business people. It's like now we started to feel like it's time for something different. But we don't know necessarily what the different is, right? So it's like, but when you start to lose your sight, like the original vision has nothing to do with what you are living today, and it's not felt or talked or lived by your employees, right? We like to talk about corporate culture, etc., but it's just on the paper.
Yeah. I mean, every founder I've talked to has had some point, they had some crazy vision, so quote air quotes crazy vision that inspired them to start their business. But then at some point in time, they're like, wow, this isn't looking like anything like what I wanted. So some of the things, sometimes what they try to do is to hire either to hire a CEO to move the business, kind of get some fresh eyes and fresh energy in to move the business in a new direction. Or maybe they think about hiring a PR or marketing or branding consultancy to give the company kind of like a facelift, change the look and change the feel of how, the brand looks. Or they may even start offering top dollar salaries, trying to attract the talent that's more aligned with the business, values, and that's more committed to the long-term success of the business. And I've seen this both on the hiring and on the ones that are looking to be hired, like as, being interviewed. When I've been interviewed by certain small companies, there were certain things that they were hoping that I would be able to carry the torch on for the company long after the owner had retired. So these are really common placebos, or things that we think are going to solve the problem. But oftentimes they don't actually solve the problem, because they're coming from the same root cause. Before I go into that, I just wanted to ask if you had anything to add there. Just intervene when you want to.
Sure. You were saying about like fresh eyes and fresh energy. I call it like literally fresh blood when you want to, put somebody in new and fresh. And if everything is good, if that person is really right for your company, like you pay, really top salary to this person, but after some time, this person, it's like one person against the world, like with everybody in your company trying to do, it's so draining. Then after that, they are like that, squeezed lemon, and they leave. It's like, that's why, like I say, I know it's strong word blood, but fresh blood comes in and then you squeeze it and just throw away. And we know also lots of big, like worldwide corporations that do that, right? They attract young, fresh talents, and then those people just cannot handle staying there.
Yeah, I mean, even with that's why I mentioned the small businesses, because when I remember when I was an engineer, and a couple of the companies that I applied and interviewed to work at, the variety of tasks that they wanted me to accomplish for the business, and then to take ownership of, so that like if something went wrong on the site at 4 a.m., which, because sometimes the construction guys get out there early, they wanted me to wake up, go down to the site, resolve the problem, get it all, like I was, really truly in ownership. And a lot of project managers know this very well. They understand this concept of being expected to be all these things and wear all these different hats. Of course, no one does all of them well, because no one can, because there's just so many things. But more importantly, it's like you feel like you give so much to build someone else's dream as an employee. But on the flip side, oftentimes the employers are feeling like, I can't get someone to whom I can pass on this vision. When you come start looking at it, the vision isn't really clear to anybody. It's not really clear anymore. Like nobody's talking about it. Nobody knows what it is. Like they're just coming, punching in the clock and doing what they need to do. So it's on both sides, there's frustration. On both sides, there's fatigue, right? There's the people who really are great talent, who want to bring something, but feel like they have to take on so much to bring that something to the company. And then the other side, for the founders, they're so exhausted trying to manage everything by themselves and feeling that there's not a solid team that they can just like leave everything to and really rest and relax from being an owner, which is why the idea of exiting can start to sound really enticing. But the root cause of all of this is really a lack of self-trust. And I know that may not sound like it connects the dots, but really when you can really trust that you have everything you need already to take the company in a new direction, you're not going to be worrying about hiring a CEO. You might still hire a CEO, but it won't be to fix the problem. It may just be because that's just a choice that you want to make, because the CEO is not the visionary. So they're going to bring their own vision, which is fine too. But they're never going to be able to fully create your vision like you can, because you're the one who originated it. It is your design. It is coming from you. It is an expression of your work in the world, right? So it can't be duplicated by someone else. Just like that we talked about in an earlier live stream, that there's no competition because of that, because you recognize that what you do is unique. So when you understand that you're the one who can move that company into that crazy vision that you originally had, and then you trust that what you're offering in your company is so unique to you that no one can do it better than you can, then that's when you start to move away from having these specific symptoms that are exhausting for your enterprise and for you as the founder. Any thoughts?
Well, one of the things, it's like when you said about exiting, it sounds like relief. And there are also now the certain waves, let's say, in the market that we see, like you already start the business so that you can sell it and become completely like, detached from it, and the business can work on itself, et cetera, right? That's another trend, let's say. But the thing is, what I'm sorry sometimes when I see, people when they're like almost, okay, I just give up because my company doesn't look like what I've envisioned, and it's not really delivering what I thought. Like I don't feel it, I don't see it, I don't even like my clients. So, and at the end, like they admit, it's like, oh, there's this, talking about competitors, they do it better. So why should I even bother, like, occupying this space in the market? I think that's like really the lowest moment, when you just throw the towel.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, and that's like you said, that's one end of the spectrum, and people can be anywhere in that end, where they may not be at that point where they're like, oh, the people do better, but either way, no matter how you look at it, they've lost the juice that they originally had to really keep allowing this business to expand and to grow. So Let's come now to what the disruptive solution is, because that's what we really want to focus on. When we have these challenges where the business is exhausting us, the first thing that we want to come back to is that the mission or the reason for the business's existence, it emanates from the core values of a company, right? It does not come from anything else. It doesn't come from supplying meeting a demand, supplying for a demand. It doesn't come from, something that you inherited from somebody else. Like, it truly comes from the core values. That is what everything from the business needs to emanate from, specifically the mission. So when it does, a lot of times people think about core values like, okay, for the company culture, which they separate from the mission, or to define the character, which can also be tied in with branding, which we talked about before. And that's all great. Nothing wrong with that. That's all wonderful. But character is not the same as deliverables, right? So when we talk about a disruptive enterprise, one that is doing things in the way moving more towards the future than what has been done in the past, then core values will also influence all of the deliverables. And then it makes it much more clear that everything is in integrity. So let me give an example, because I know that sounded like a whole bunch of words there. So a really simple example that I can give is I've just recently been looking for a new website plugins and software for my website. And I've shopped in so many different types of platforms, types of plugins, types of software packages. And in most, with a few exceptions, I can feel the intention behind the marketing, behind the sales pages, to focus on capitalizing on making money, as opposed to focusing on adding the greatest value and service to the customer. How can I say this? Because I'll look at certain features. It'll say, have all these promises in the sales page. It's going to do this and this and this and this and this for you. And for me, I sometimes, just for the sake of my engineering brain, it's easy for me to look at tables. So I'll look at a table to see, okay, what are the features of each package? So I see which package I need. So I'm like, okay, the basic looks good, but let me just look at these other tables, the other columns, to see what else is there. And I'm like, wait a minute, that feature, I thought that feature was part of the basic. I thought that was what they promised at the top. Now I'm looking in the next one, I'm like, oh, but I need that feature too. So now I end up getting this package for a 1,000-person enterprise, where I really only needed just basic functionality, but some of the basic functionality doesn't really work unless I had this one other feature, two other features. So now I got to go buy the higher one. So if it was just one or two sites, you could just say, okay, well, that's just how their software runs. But when it's consistent across the board, where different features are in different places, you can see the game. And you can see that it's not really done with okay, this is Mr. Small Business Owner. This is the kind of stuff that he's going to need to function. Let's create this package for them. And it's not really about the cost. It's just really about the way that things are presented and packaged. It's not really thinking about things from that customer's point of view, but they're pretending that it is. So it's like that dichotomy that you feel on the sales page, and that lack of, to me, sometimes it feels like lack of integrity, but it might be integrity for them. I'm not going to judge them. But the point is that this lack of clarity between what's marketed on the top and then what's sold on the bottom.
What's promised, yeah.
Well, I don't really feel comfortable that this company has my best interest at heart. So now I don't know if I want to buy anything from them, right? Now, for most consumers are feeling this on an unconscious level. They feel it, but there's nothing kind of maybe for some they may, but for a lot of people, they may not actually be able to put it into words what they're feeling, right? But it's it becomes more and more clear that there needs to be a continuity between all the messaging and the deliverables, that it really lets the customer know, and in general, the public know, even if it's let's say it's an information kind of thing and not a product kind of thing, that this company, your company stands for these values, and it is communicated and it is operated from throughout the process, not just in one area or another area where it looks cool in, you know, in a tagline or, you know, a heading or an ad, but then when you come down to the actual nitty-gritty of the day-to-day grind of actually what you deliver, it's something different, or it's incomplete unless somebody has to do these extra things that do what? Bring more money into the business. So there's nothing wrong with charging money, charging different tiers. There's nothing wrong with them. I'm not knocking it. But it's just the way that it is presented versus the way that it's delivered. Is there continuity? Is it really truly aligning with the values of the company? Or is it just all talk and then the doing is something different? That's where the challenges lie. Go ahead.
Yes, it's exactly like the difference is, as you said, it's like we're not against charging money at all, but there are moments when we feel great paying for something, product or service, and there are situations where I feel like, you know, I have to, but it's not like I'm really enjoying it. And again, as you said before, more and more of us consumers will be feeling this between the lines, you know, an unspoken energy behind, or incongruency between the promise and the, you know, marketing and actual sales, how they are happening. So that's why we are stressing it, you know, now for everybody, that there is an option, there is another option, there is an alternative. That if you dial in now your core values and your mission and incorporate it into, you know, communicating values, then that's how you can ensure, if you want, the future of your enterprise. Yeah,
I love it. And talking about enterprise, that's actually a good segue, because I think from here on out, I'm not saying it's a strict rule because I don't do rules, but we're going to really more refer to enterprise and entity more so than business. Why? That's done intentionally, because business, the busyness, is often associated with doing, with output, with income, with revenue, with results, with KPIs, with you know, all these doing things. Whereas an entity is just a being. It could be a person, it could be a company, right? But when we're talking about it in terms of trade, which we will get into in a future live, right? When we're talking about it in terms of trade, we're talking about a new way of seeing business, not as a doing busyness, but as a beingness. It's a new way of leading from being rather than from doing. Okay, there's so many applications to that. I'll give you one really simple one because I want to tie these ideas together. I have leaders often say, well, I'm so worried about breaking rapport or losing trust. So I'm always working really hard to not break rapport. But there's a fear around breaking rapport with your reports, with your clients, with whoever. I say, I know I'm going to break rapport. So I just get really good at restoring it because I know I'm going to break it, because that's the kind of disruptor that I am. There's going to be something I say or do that's going to piss somebody off and break rapport with them. But I'm not worried about that, because when I'm being 100% myself, I am being myself. And sometimes in being myself, something I say or do is going to break rapport or lose some trust from someone. But in my beingness, if I am completely in integrity, it's always going to balance out. It's always going to not be a major issue in the big sense of things. And if you want to question that, I always say, look at your own life. Have there been people who have said the worst things, like super offensive, have done some horrible stuff, and you're like, I can't believe this person did that, but you still respect them? Yes. I know in my life there have been people like that. Why? Because they're congruent. They have integrity. They're always the same person. So even if they say something, you're just like, I can't with this person right now. But still, you have respect for them, right? So you understanding that being is so much easier than the doing, because in the doing, you're always worried about offending someone, messing something up. But when you're in the being, there's grace for that. There's space for that. There's flexibility for that. That offers you the greatest amount of freedom. And I'm all about freedom. Less boundaries, less restrictions, less rules, more freedom. So this is why we're going to be talking more about entities and enterprise as something that goes beyond your occupation, beyond being your own boss, beyond being self-employed, beyond running an entity solely for the purpose of financial profits, which we'll also talk about in a moment, but really coming into a space where you are showing up as yourself as a leader and leading an entity that is also showing up as itself. Because all of this, whether we've talked about branding or now we're talking about mission and deliverables, it's all about staying true to the values of the entity, as opposed to using tactics and strategies and schemes and these little games and manipulation ploys to stay quote unquote competitive. The whole vocabulary is changing. Go ahead, I know you want to say something.
Exactly. No, because we have to talk about so many things and clarify those. Because when you said about restoring, and breaking those relationships, etc., it's like after the restoration, they're even stronger, right? Because even that's why, like, really identifying the being as an entity and then doing is a secondary, right? Because we must put the strategies and tactics together, but they must be first like aligned to what is being, what is the mission, what is the soul, if you want, of the business, right? So the type of enterprise we're talking about is the we call it vanguard business, which is this personal initiative for the public good, focusing on the quality of life. This allows you, the founder, to make a greater impact within your existing business. Like, you don't have to go out and create something else that is draining you again. Mm-hmm. You're putting even more into your plate. And this also helps define the direction of where your enterprise is going. So it's like knowing that, again, that beingness is not static, is forever evolving and going and changing. And lately, right, everybody started to talk also about resilience. It's like that kind of, adaptation and being able to restore and restart and, go again. So that's what we've been, you and Deborah, talking about it over 2 years ago, right? So about the resilience, I mean. So this is like, how I can say, we for us is important to point that there is, again, another way of doing business, which is being an end-to-end enterprise.
Yeah, absolutely, 100%. And, again, we have a lot to cover here, because these are all the phrases here that I have a little asterisk next to. They're terms that we've sort of had an affiliation with, but now we're using them a little bit differently. And we're going to help to, through these live streams, like show how this vocabulary really helps to create a new landscape within which you can see your business / enterprise / entity, right? Where you can start to see yourself in a completely different landscape. I don't know if you've ever watched, there's a movie called The Greatest Game Ever Played, about a famous golf player. And he was actually an amateur, and he was following behind some of these greats. And one of the greats that he was his idol, this really famous golf player. It was so cool. They showed graphically how he would erase all the people and all of the props and everything from the landscape. So all he saw was the grass, the hole, and his ball. That was it. He saw nothing else did he see. And it was really neat, because I think that's a really good way to describe what we're trying to do right now. We're trying to just like erase all the things you ever thought you knew about all of these topics and give you some really clear, simple points to focus on, So it's like, instead of having to think about branding and marketing and sales and deliver, you're just thinking about core values. And the core values you don't even think about because they're already built in, right? So it's like you're simplifying everything down and you're making it a lot easier. So that's why we have these new phrases. So two of the other phrases I wanted to really quickly share was profits, where profit has traditionally and historically conventionally been associated with money. Whereas we're looking at profit as the improvement of the quality of life. Okay, so that is a difference between, because in truth, actually quality of life has nothing to do with money. You can argue it left and right and center, but in truth, money is just an intermediary tool used to improve quality, to obtain something that would improve your quality of life. But in truth, it has nothing to do with it. And then the other thing about quality of life, to be very specific, because again, people have different ideas. People think about, first, there was the first level of having nice cars and homes and financial assets, right? Then there was the next level, which is where most people are now, where it's like, okay, it's about having time for vacation and time for your family and having a great, healthy body and all those kinds of things. But in truth, all those things are still external. Because people can have an amazing quality of life and have no family and have, not a whole lot of money for vacations or things and still have a high quality of life. And a lot of people who have all those things have tons of vacations and have tons of time to spend with their family and have everything they could ever wish for, still have a low quality of life. The quality of life is not proportional to those external things. It's completely 100% an inner game. So this is why when we start looking at profit as quality of life, and we start looking at an entity as the goal of it is to get a profit that's quality of life, now we completely moved into a completely different landscape from that of the bottom line being finances and profits to the bottom line being trust, because trust is how we build, is what we build everything else on top of. So this is there's a lot here. It's a game-changing kind of live, but I really wanted us to really start to give you a sense of how vast this can really be, but also how simple it can be.
Yes, it's simple and not easy, but very doable. Right. So this is something we are living ourselves, and we want to show you what it is and how does it feel.
Yeah. And I mean, at the end of the day, a lot of times we hear people say, like, your first question should be is, will this make me a profit? Will this make me money? Will this move that needle, right? That move the needle term that we hear all the time. And what I would like to say is, what we want to help you to remember about your own enterprise is asking the question, how can this be of greatest service to humanity? It gives you a completely different focus. And again, we use the example of this amazing serial entrepreneur, Jack Sim, where he said he realized when he left off on the more conventional types of businesses and started to really help people in the BOP, bottom of the pyramid is what he calls it, he was so amazed at how amazing he felt and how his quality of life jumped up. He said, why didn't I start doing this earlier? Now, there are many ways to be of service to humanity, and there's many different forms. The ways are infinite, really. You can do anything. But the idea is the intention behind it. Remember, it's not what you do, it's where you are when you're doing it. So whether you're I'm not going to say, I was going to say something, I'm going to change my statement. Whether you're making juice, or you're a waitress serving meals, or you are in a financial institution, it doesn't really matter what you're doing. It's just more so, what is the intention behind what you're doing? Because that intention is going to take you in a very different direction, even with the same actions. And when we look to be of greatest service, true service now, not scarcity and charity where it's like a never-ending cycle of neediness and codependence. No, we're not talking about that. But true service to humanity, what ends up happening is we profit the most. Now, the profit might come in forms of finances as well. That might be part of it. But the highest profit is how we show up and how we affect others by our presence because our quality of life is high. It literally changes everything on a molecular level, not just for you, but for all the people who you and your enterprise touch. And that's what we want to see. I mean, that's what juices us. That's what gets us out of bed in the morning. And that's what we're here to spread, that message.
Yes, this reminds me one of my teachers. I want to quote who says, never, always fulfilled, never satisfied, right? It's like you're always trust yourself and what you're doing in this moment. And so you're always fulfilled. And then you are never satisfied because you have always that hunger of serving the humanity.
I love it. That's great. And that's a great place to leave
our
conversation today. So always fulfilled, never satisfied. Hopefully these concepts, you sit with them a little bit. Maybe you might want to come back and listen to this again on your drive somewhere when you're doing some laundry or you're having an opportunity to listen to it, and let these ideas sink in. And we would love to read your feedback in the comments. This is we're always taking in information and feedback and incorporating it in, because we want what we're sharing to truly be of service to you, to really truly give you more options and more ideas of how you can enjoy your life more and make your life more enjoyable for all the people that you and your enterprise touch.
See you next time.
All right. See ya.
Bye.